Great. So welcome everyone to this month's Health Tech Entrepreneurs Meetup. Today we have Cyrus here as our speaker, and he's going to be talking about product development for medical applications. So as a reminder, this is a place where you can learn about how to apply all these concepts we're learning from things like webinars and seminars to real life. So it's a chance for everyone to discuss their own experiences and share tips and advice. So if there's anything you'd like to hear about in future, feel free to let me know. If you'd like to speak on a topic that you're an expert in, that will be awesome as well. So please let me know. If you'd like to join our Slack space, let me know. And then, we have a few new items from the MDC studio. So now we have a monthly newsletter that I sent out earlier today. Feel free to let me know if you'd like to sign up and you didn't get it. We also have an MDC YouTube channel where I am posting these recordings as well as some other interviews and videos that we had that may be of interest. So I'm actually going to drop the link for the YouTube channel, everyone. So that is our YouTube channel. So feel free to check it out, and I'll be posting recordings from these meetups there. Also, we have sponsors. Let's see, hold on. So I would like to thank our sponsors. MDC Studio, Fulton Bank, Cooley Law Firm, and TEDCO. So thank you very much. If you'd like to, if you're interested in sponsoring us, let us know. You'll be advertised at every meetup this year. All right, so let's do our usual introduction. So I'm just going to go down the list on my right. And so if I call your name and you'd like to introduce yourself, please unmute and let us know who you are, what you're working on. If there's any help you're seeking, anything you're looking for, or any help you can offer, this is a great time to let everyone know as well. So I can get started. Hi, I'm Neo. I am founder and CEO of Neurosonics Medical, where we're developing a minimally invasive device for neurosurgery. I'm also the vice president of business development at the MDC Studio, which is a startup studio dedicated to building health and technology startups. I'll let Gil explain more if he'd like later on. I also recently started, Nina's here too. I also recently started as a senior analyst for the MDC Verte Impact Fund, which focuses on medtech and biotech companies in opportunity zones. All right, so let's see. Gil?
Didn't think I would have to go so soon. I was writing my speech. So I'm Gil Blankenship, the founder of MDC Studio, and an engineer at University of Maryland College Park. And I'm happy to see everyone here today for this. Thanks for putting it together, Neil.
Thank you, Gil. Abe?
Hi everyone. My name is Abraham Diaz. Currently, I'm founder of Cosmos Medical LLC, a startup focusing on developing new technologies for prenatal baby incubators. At the same time, I'm coursing studies at Johns Hopkins Carey Business School as an MBA student, focusing on leadership and entrepreneurship in medical devices.
Thank you. Anthony?
Hi, everyone. Anthony Camarada. I have a company called Startup Cannon, and Startup Cannon is a contract CFO and controller service. So we're on the more of the business side and less of the science side, but we help companies grow and execute on their vision through corporate finance and accounting work. So it's good to be here.
Thank you. David?
Hi, my name is David No. I'm an informatics pharmacist with MedStar Health in the Maryland, DC area. I'm also the CEO of a startup named Metas Health, where we focus really on hospital pharmacy software. So we have two cloud-based software programs. One is to help hospital pharmacies manage their medications inside of their emergency code cards. And then the second software is to help hospitals to automate the medication density calculations that needed for IV compounding software. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Irong, I think she's in the car. All right.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Sorry. Yes. I'm Edong Esiet Gibson. I run the Ideas Group, and it's a consultancy that provides project management services and strategic advice to life sciences and public health organizations. Nice meeting everyone.
Awesome. Thank you. E. Belsinger.
Hi, yeah, my name is Ed Belsinger. I joined RPM Tech about a half a year ago. My background is in medical product development, so I've done that for big companies as well as startups, and actually have a lot of baby incubator experience, so to the previous speaker. So anyway, yeah, happy to be here and be part of the group.
Awesome. Thank you. Greg.
Hi, this is Greg Miller. I'm a founder of Health Tech Alley. We started that about a year ago. I am also an active startup advisor. I'm connected to a few different angel investing networks. I'm a pretty active investor. Sit on a couple of advisory boards, and just look forward to connecting to this group and seeing how it goes. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Hamid.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Hamid Badi. I've been in the tech transfer space for the past decade. Currently, I'm representing the West Virginia region and assisting with commercialization activities for technologies coming out of the healthcare, life sciences, medtech space. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim. All right. Skip Jim. M. Spencer.
I am a scientist at an R&D company, and I'm thinking about starting up a health company that might involve medical devices.
Awesome. You're in the right place. All right. Naveed.
Hi everyone, my name is Naveed Google. I am a founder of a medtech company, Ectosonics, where we develop therapeutic ultrasound devices for focused ultrasound applications. Thank you so much.
Great. Nina.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nina Lambert. I'm with the Harbour Launch at IMET Business Incubator in Baltimore's Inner Harbour. We have companies in the health science space and the environmental science space as well. I lead the programming there. I'm a former entrepreneur as well. And so I'm always keen to learn about different resources and prototypers to help our early stage entrepreneurs navigate what's out there. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Ryan.
Hey everyone, I'm currently Vice President of Venture Development and Corporate Innovation for a firm in Memphis called TEDCO, and also a serial medical device startup entrepreneur.
Wonderful. Stephen.
Hi everyone, I'm Stephen Marceno. I'm the Director of Engineering at MDC and also the CEO of one of the portfolio companies at MDC called Synosa Medical, where we develop diagnostics and therapeutics for obstructive sleep apnea.
Nice. Thank you, Stephen. Wayne.
Hi, Wayne Sternberger. I'm founder and CTO of Bloxanop. It's a startup out of Johns Hopkins where I spent 40 years as a systems engineer. We are developing a novel patient monitor that will allow us to objectively and non-invasively tell you in real time whether a neural blockade is working, and if so, how well it's working.
Wonderful. And I think I saw Connie and Chrissy come in. Connie?
Hi, we've been developing health IT and health apps for the Army for 11 years. We'd like to commercialize that now and make it more accessible to everybody, especially the mental health applications that we've done under the Army's funding before.
Thank you. And Chrissy?
Chrissy, I'm a postdoc at Johns Hopkins, and we're developing a technology for ultra-sensitive biomarker detection, so we're exploring potential applications for commercialization.
Wonderful. All right, I think that was everyone. So I'd like to introduce Cyrus Etemad-Moghadam. He's the founder and president of RPM Tech, which is a product development company with extensive experience in working with startups and entrepreneurs. So I've been friends with him for several years now. Since I joined the entrepreneurial world. So he can help startups from the concept stage all the way to design to prototype and testing. So I will hand it off to Cyrus now.
Thank you, Now. Appreciate it. So hopefully you're seeing my screen, and there's only one screen and it's got a big light bulb there. Perfect. Well, it's nice to meet everyone. I appreciate now the opportunity to present. We talked last year, and you guys had a bunch of very good questions. Yep, it's exactly what Now said. We're a product development company. My background is mechanical engineering. I've been involved with developing products, designing things for a very long time. And I always wanted to have the ability to get involved, not just from the engineering standpoint, but the overall product development. And so I founded a company 15 years ago that does exactly that, product development. So we produce, or we design things that are physical, things you can hold in your hands, or even bigger. We primarily innovate and solve problems. Obviously, one way to verify that these things work is to prototype, and then ultimately we help transition that product all the way to production. So, I'm not going to say we hold your hand all the way to the end, but we'll basically be involved with all aspects and support in any way we can. These are typically products that can be anything from very simple to extremely complex. And in the end, it's something that you're able to manufacture and sell independently of the work that we've done. So, in-house, we have system engineering, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, software, firmware engineers, industrial design. We have model makers. These are people that can fabricate things. They can finish them. We can breadboard, prototype, and we can assemble things. And then obviously we do a whole lot of testing and validation. And that's one thing. And this is my 30-second sales pitch, which is we have everybody under one roof. It's all done in the States. Most of us are in Maryland. We have a small office in Westfield, New York. So we've been involved. We are not focused specifically on the medical side. It just happens that there are quite a few companies involved with healthcare in the Maryland area. We've probably been doing medical type work for on and off since 2009, I want to say, maybe 2008. But really have been focusing a whole lot more on it recently in the last 4 or 5 years. And added Ed, who you met, to the team, bringing additional depth and breadth and knowledge. So what you're seeing on the screen are a variety of things that we've worked on that we can share. There's other stuff we can't. But a typical medical devices in diagnostics will require some sort of consumable. So we get involved with the consumable aspects. We'll also get involved with the design of the overall product. User interface, is critical, obviously. The componentry, all of the safety regulation aspects are in there. So what you're seeing on the screen, and going from, I think you can see, you can see the mouse. We've got consumable cartridge for blood diagnostics, which incorporates microfluidics. We've got a scent device with a touchscreen handheld. We've got a prototype unit that we developed for a company, a local company, to be able to verify as part of their phase 2 evaluation, their ability to meet the goals that we're looking for. The bottom image is for the instrument that uses the blood diagnostics device. And then lastly, a small portable device, transportable device that is being developed right now. So we're not done with that one, for a Baltimore-based company, actually at IMET, where Nina Lamba is. So one of the things that I tell people is we don't do software, pure software. We do get involved with software and firmware as it relates to the design of the devices and connecting to them and the analytics and all of the data. But what we design ultimately is going to include a physical component to it. And the problem with developing medical devices, medical instruments, is that they require a very different level of effort and support than your typical software development. You can start a software company in your bedroom with a laptop and a good network connection. Very different story when you're doing this in the physical area. And so you have to have a team of experts, you have to have a bunch of equipment, some of it extremely expensive. You have to have, you have to run and make all types of prototypes that require a lot of expenses. There's a lot of testing, which means you need physical space, and all this requires a team of individuals. And that's part of the crew from one of our outings. The process is not linear, even though it looks linear here. The reality is there's a lot of things that happen, but we basically start with, and that was one of the questions that Now had last time, which is what do you start with? When do you get into, how do you start a product development effort? Obviously, all of the marketing aspects are things that you as the experts would have to know. So you have to know what your market needs. And you guys are experts at this. We're experts at developing the product, but you know your market. Come up with requirements. You may have concepts. You may even have a prototype. And you also know what the general regulation is. And so the basic phases at a high level, again, not the most linear process, but this is the one way of representing it, is that you start with a concept phase. And that includes figuring out what this looks like, what the interface is going to be, what the risk assessments are, which is key to any medical device. The user interface, the process flow, what does it look like? How is it used? And then everything related to the architecture of the design, both from a hardware and software standpoint. There's a lot of IP work that goes on. Typically, by the time someone comes to us, they've already done some of that work, but we help with that as well. And then anything related to simulation and analysis. We may also test the concept up front to make sure it's actually even feasible. So the prototyping can happen early on. The design phase basically refines everything. We do all of the typical things that are done in a design effort. And we prototype, and this is when we have the ability or the opportunity to work with our customers on verifying that this does what they want to. At every step of the way, there's going to be the possibility of some refinement. So, we may go through a concept phase and then get into design, and a design phase, we need to go back and take a look at some items that we didn't know of. The validation phase is verifying that this actually works. And going through the whole certification process. And then ultimately, obviously, it's production. And production can be done by you internally in your company. It could be done by a contract manufacturer. So that's the basic process. The first part is the most important part, and that is planning is number one. The more time you spend upfront on making sure you understand the market, understand the competition, understand the IP out there is key. You also want to know kind of what you're going to do in terms of distribution channels, who's going to sell and so on. That can change as you go, but you want to have an idea because you don't want to start something that you find out you cannot sell because the distribution channels are closed to you. Proof of concept, research your technology, experiments. Make sure you have a basic idea of what the product is. A product specification, what are the requirements? How is it going to be used? What are the use cases? And what the architecture looks like. So a couple of pictures I have in here. The big one here is the user experience. So this was a tent that we got as part of an effort. We're developing a product for a consumer application. And the user experience is key. And so we spent some time outside playing with this tent that's supposed to be a one-person tent. It comes out. We figured out that actually it wasn't. So it was an interesting experience. And, that user experience is a big deal. As a doctor, do they Does a doctor want to use a device that they can't use that requires 2 or 3 additional people to help with, for example? On the right, a couple of, this is and I showed the last year, it's a solar panel that's on a stage and it charges a phone, and we have an app that controls it. So this could be one, kind of a design. Ultimately, you have to, where you spend the money upfront on the planning is key, because you're going to pay a whole lot more down the road if you haven't done all of these things. Detail design, it's everything you can think of, right? It's the mechanical design, it's the board layout, coding, and searching components. There's prototyping that's key here, where you fabricate things, you assemble things. You have to document the basic designs, and that's a key aspect, right? This is the translation of your concept, your idea, into something you can give to a manufacturer to make in quantities. Testing, there's all types of testing to consider. Validation is, does it work? Can you actually verify it works? Worst case would be, what happens if it's too hot or too cold? What happens if I'm using my device on a person that's on the upper range of the height or lower range? And then, obviously anything related to the IP. So as you develop a product, you may find certain things that you can actually add to your patent portfolio. And then once that phase is done, it's a transition to production, which is key. This is when you have to take everything that you've come up with, designed, and find sources to manufacture these things. You have contract manufacturers typically that are used for the full assembly, but some companies have their own manufacturing, and this is where you have to decide whether you're going to build these or you're going to buy those. So this is make or buy decision. One of the big cost items when you go to production is everything related to the upfront tooling costs. These are non-recurring costs that you're going to have to make upfront. If you're going to injection mold a part, for example, for this assembly, for example, these are all injection molded parts. So these would probably cost anywhere between $5,000 and $30,000 in tooling, depending on if you make these offshore in the US. You may have some machine parts, some PC boards. There's off-the-shelf components that are modified specifically for your application. So you got to consider all these things. Everything gets inspected once it's done, once you've got the tooling. And then when your product is done, you also need to package it. So there's some packaging aspects that you have to consider. For example, we designed a device or an instrument that has a centrifuge in it. And you just don't want, during shipping, heavy components that are attached to the motor to damage the assembly. So we had to consider that in the design. And then we worked with a packaging company to develop for us the right packaging for the vibration, shock, temperature, and so on. And then testing. Excuse me. Testing, includes anything related to certification. So IEC, UL, FDA. Qualification would be null standard type work. Obviously not applicable here, but still something that needs to happen. Operational testing. When you develop your manufacturing plan, if you're going to make, say, for example, you make a surgical tool, and you think or you believe that there are some variation that you're concerned about, you may need to do 100% testing. You want to consider these things. And then there's things like accelerated testing. If something's going to be outdoors, you want to know what happens. What happens if it's outdoors for an extended period of time? You want to know what happens if once a device is used 50, 100 times, 1,000,000 times, depending on its use. Destructive testing is the robustness. And then, like I said, the planning for manufacturing. So the point of all this is there's a lot to be done from your idea, your concept, hey, I'd like to make this device, to getting it to production. Sorry, I have allergies and I'm drinking water. So once you're in production, that's a completely different story, right? Once you're in production, you've decided whether you manufacture in-house or you have a contract manufacturer. You do have to consider inventory. and production testing. So fixtures that may be tested to identify any issues with the equipment, and then packing, shipping, all the logistics of where everything goes. And so really, in theory, this is where you make the money. So that's kind of the process in a very compressed view. And the reason I went through it quickly is because I'm sure there's going to be some questions. I figured I could probably cover those. I do want to add one more thing. So, we here on this call are all entrepreneurs, and we're all chasing that success as a company. Product development is a service type of business, so it's not something where RPM Tech is going to go IPO one day or anything like that. I do this because I love developing products. I'm extremely curious. That's why we work in multiple markets. But one of the big things is longevity of your business. And so on October 1st, RPM Tech will be 15 years old. So it's just,
Wow.
as I tell people, when you start a business, it's extremely difficult. It takes time. There's a lot of hard work. There's late nights and weekends and missed fun. And there's tight finances often. But certainly it is worth it. So, I tell people, be patient. Your success is measured in decades.
Cyrus, this is Abraham. I had a question on, I know that you have specified different phases in order to get a product from concept all the way to production and finally sales. Out of all of these phases that you have explained to us here, which one is the one that you need the most financial support to? Or which one do you think it needs the most financial support in order to accomplish?
Sure. So, our expertise is the product development, getting from concept all the way to production. We don't manufacture. We help companies find manufacturers. And what we don't do is we don't do any marketing and sales. So the engineering is the most expensive. By default, when a company comes to us with an idea, we're going to be the biggest part of the expense, but we're not the only one. There's in the medical field, there is a lot of regulation, quality requirements, and certifications, and that is not very far from our costs. Material-wise, there's a lot of cost to verify the designs, to go through and prototype and do clinical evaluations, in the field evaluations, and that can be pretty expensive as well. But yeah, the engineering, the development effort is probably the most expensive. By the time someone comes to us, they will have spent a fraction of what they need to get from one end to the other.
Thank you, Cyrus. Now let's change phases. How about the timing frame? Because not necessarily the one that needs the most financial support will be the one that actually needs the most span of time frame. To complete the phase of manufacturing, for example, may be a different time frame of that of design. Design could be 1 or 2 years. A manufacturer could be either 6 or 8 months for doing it.
Sure. So from a design standpoint, for the overall effort, the detailed design part is probably the longest. The duration can vary extensively. We did some work on a surgical tool for a customer, and it took a few months, a handful of months to get there. We've done a development effort where there was quite a bit of proof of concept on microfluidics. And that product took 8 years to get from, hey, this is my idea to getting into production. I would say a custom instrument where, let's say, for example, you're developing some assay, for example, or something like that, or you're developing some chemistry that has to do certain things. You've got an easy 2 years ahead of you before you can get working prototypes that you're happy with. You've done it faster. It's expensive because you're doing it faster. You've got more people involved with it. But, medical devices take a while. And then you have to go through the clinical testing, and validation and FDA, and that can take a long time as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Cyrus. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Last year, or was it last year? I think it was last year. We did when now set these meetings up. One of the things that she asked me, and I made a slide this time around, was when is it a good time to engage a company like ours? So really, the timing is very difficult to balance because you can either bootstrap for too long, or you can go too early into the development effort. If you bootstrap for too long, you've basically wasted time, because at that point, I'm going to guess that everybody on this call can pretty much figure out how to do mechanical design, how to lay out a board, how to use a 3D printer. We can all do this, but there's going to be a point where you may miss your time to market. So you don't want to bootstrap too long. You also don't want to jump in and spend a bunch of money unless you're looking for some help on the proof of concept. And so, there are multiple reasons to engage a company like ours. One of them is when you're lacking internal skills. You don't have, you've never certified a product, you've never designed a product, you've never done hardware, you don't have electronics, understanding of electronics, or you know how to do the simple stuff, but you need to solve a much more complex problem. Another one is when you get to you've done a proof of concept that you are now at the stage where you're ready to go to the next step, full speed concept to production. Time is of the essence. Like I said, we can all do these things, but you need to, I don't know if anybody's tried to hire people recently, but it's very difficult to bring people on board, find the right people, sometimes train them in your area of expertise. So that's, when you need to get something done quickly, it helps to work with companies like ours. When you're looking for a quality finished product, if all you're going to do is a quick prototype, again, the bootstrapping may be perfectly applicable, but when you're looking at a product you can show someone, even investors are picky. Investors will look at something and say, oh, this is ugly, this is too heavy, this is too tall, these things you want to have expertise to help with. When you can't do or don't want to do it in-house, some businesses are purely based on the research in-house, the core competency in-house, and the whole development effort is done externally. And then again, the whole complex product. So, on this page, you've got things like a tracking device here. So this tracking device has electronics, it has firmware, it has mechanical design. We had to waterproof it. There was a user interface that allowed the customer to come to us and basically be able to turn the whole product around. Another one is this product here is a point of service device that does some diagnostics on the presence of drugs in urine. You have industrial design, right? What does it look like? How does it feel? You've got firmware, you've got user interface. Internally, there are mechanisms, there are pumps, and you've got consumables and so on. You have to have the expertise in-house. You can go find your best friend who's a great software developer and your neighbor's cousin who's a mechanical engineer. And the problem is ultimately meshing everything is more difficult. So I know that now I was going to ask this question again. I figured that I'd talk a little bit about this, because when you make a complex product, not having the right team, it can be a whole lot more expensive than spending money on doing the right way. We have a customer that came to us. I can't talk about what it is, unfortunately, but by the time they got to us, they had spent $130,000 and they had nothing to show for. May sound like in the medical field, $130,000 is not that much, but it wasn't a medical device. It was something very simple. So, it's a difficult balance. Talk to product development companies and find out, more about where you are and find out if this is a good time to get someone involved. We very often talk to people who are not ready, and they come back to us a year or two later, and we get involved with their design efforts.
I have a question for you. I just wanted to ask because I have an idea. One is for like a medical device and the other is for a drug. And I wanted to know how much money on average do you think you need to raise capital-wise to develop a prototype? And do you recommend funding it yourself or trying to get venture capitalists involved?
Sure. So I'm not very strong on the finance side, but I've been on a bunch of calls with now and now can probably help this a little bit more. But a lot of the companies we work with on the medical side tend to do some internal investment of time and enough funds to do a quick proof of concept and talk to different individuals. I believe the most common approach, and it allows you to retain as much of your company as possible, is going for grants, SBIRs. So going to NSF, NIH. Obviously we have a customer that's going through the EPA, and another one is going through Department of Energy. So that's a great way to get the funds. In terms of development effort, it's all over. I just talked to a gentleman a little bit earlier today. I said, our customers can spend anywhere between $5,000 and $1 million in a year on development effort. It varies depends on what they're trying to do, how quickly they're trying to do, how complex it is. As soon as you add electronics and firmware and so on, it adds quite a bit of cost.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Feel free to follow up with us. So yeah, a lot of my startup and also a lot of the companies at the MDC studio have started with a lot of grant funding, and we've applied to NIH, NSF, Department of Defense. So feel free to follow up with us.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, TEDCO is a great resource. So we've worked on and off with TEDCO for years. Yeah, they're really good. They've got different funds, even rural. There's rural funds. There's Hartford County and Carroll County and other places where you can get support even though you're in a rural area. So those are good places to go.
Okay. Do you need to live in those areas?
So we are in Hartford County. So
oh, okay.
we'll further, and we've actually again, because I can't talk about what we do, there is a gentleman on the call today that was able to get some funding. If he's willing to share that to help with some of the research work that he had done through TEDCO.
Okay.
I think Naveed has a question.
Yeah, thank you. I have actually two questions for Cyrus. One is, what's the suggested final medical device price based on cost of goods? What's the multiplication factor here? And my second question to Cyrus is, when we develop a prototype for a medical device, do we need to change the parts, electronic parts, for a final FDA approved solution?
Right. And so those are two good questions. I wish I could help you with the first one. When people come to us with consumer products, I tell them 2 to 1 typically. The problem with medical, it's all over the place. I believe, and maybe now it's got a better answer for that. I believe that one of the big items is how the device is going to be used. So if that device is going to be used, if it's a test instrument and you have a consumable, I believe it's what Medicare is willing to pay for that test, or what the cost reduction is going to be for an insurance, the risk reduction to use that. After that, you have to figure out what the initial investment is in your business. When you get grants, it's basically $0, right? Because it's yours. You can use the grants and there's no cost. But when you start having costs that you have to pay out of your pocket, you'll have to match that. Second one, I don't know if you have more to add to that now.
Yeah, the pricing is something I'm still learning about and grappling with. You need to, of course, cover the cost of goods, but yeah, also, how is it going to get reimbursed? How much Are they going to get reimbursed? How does it compare to something else they're already using? Or if it's something that's not even reimbursed, how many patients do they need to use it on before they can make up the cost? Or, even if it doesn't cost that much to produce, if it's saving a lot of money, if it's saving the customer a lot of money, you can do value-based pricing, which I'm still kind of learning about and trying to get my head around it.
It may be something. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, my experience in sort of big medical companies was anything for capital equipment where you're selling the equipment and it's going to be in a hospital for 10, 15 years. We always looked for at least 50% gross margin for selling, and there were products that did better than that, but if it wasn't making 50%, you probably weren't going to go forward with the project. For something like Cyrus said, where there's a disposable involved, you definitely look at reimbursement and cost per test and amortize that over any instrument and other infrastructure costs, and you have to build a business model from that standpoint.
So on the second question, it's a completely different story. So if you think about what you're trying to do with the device, depending on the safety aspects for verifying that the concept works, as long as you're safe, it really doesn't matter what components you use, because safety is key. So like I said, I think I mentioned one of the devices that I showed a picture of uses a Raspberry Pi inside. They were doing a proof of concept. It was a prototype. It did not require certification and so on. When you go to clinical studies, you need to have an intrinsically safe device. And so at that point, not just the component selection, but materials, right? Are they safe materials? Are they safe if it goes inside the body? It's even worse, a class 3 device. Things like all of the safeties, electronic safety, the circuit designs, all of these things. If you have a system that requires power, having redundant power, and so on. So anything that you're trying to do a proof of concept, you're doing a test on, I don't know, a corpse or an animal and so on, you have plenty of options. So I'm going to give an example. If you're doing, I know that we had talked to a customer that was looking at taking, I think it was an ultrasound concept, and they had designed probes, and they wanted to play with the concept, and they ended up using a Raspberry Pi to test the circuitry, to test the concept. That's perfectly fine, as long as you've got the safeties in place. But once you get to clinical and so on, you definitely want to stick to the production design.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I have a quick question on the regulated devices. Do you have a quality system that you work off of, or you kind of blend into the companies?
Sure. So we have a quality system. It is not ISO certified. It's based around the ISO 1345, but I would not be honest with you if I said it was perfect. What we do have is we work with the client, the customer, and I'll explain why. First off, each quality system is going to be based on how and what they're selling and how they're going to manufacture this. So for example, is it outsourced, is it insourced? Is it a class 1 or class 3 device, and so on. So our system is based around ISO 1345, configuration management, controls, prototype controls, travelers, all of these things, calibrations, incoming inspection, all these things we have a process for, multiple processes for. But ultimately, when our client is going to certify the product, they are the ones who are going to be audited. They are the ones who have to have all the documentation when they meet with the FDA. So, we did, for the last few customers, we've done the full failure modes and effect analysis with them. So we developed those. We worked with them on the document controls, change management, and everything else. which they implemented on their site. But ultimately, they're the manufacturer, even though they may not be the actual manufacturer, they may have a contract manufacturer. They are the manufacturer of the product. So we marry our system with theirs.
Gotcha. So if you sourced whatever a part from a third party manufacturer, you do the supplier agreement, or they would supply? Okay.
So for the prototyping, yes. For production, as I mentioned, the goal at the end of the effort, we provide the customer a technical data package. They've got everything they need to manufacture this. They've got the firmware, they've got the test procedures, they've got everything that they need that we generate. And then, they typically work with a contract manufacturer, or they may have internal manufacturing, and they use all of these documents to manufacture their products. So we are, we're done when the transition to production is completed. We often do, support. So we, some of the devices that I've shown have been in production for years, and we're still doing updates, end of life of components, added features, and so on. But they control the rest.
Gotcha. Okay, appreciate it.
And one thing I would say, so I have a lot of advice. I've been around for a long time. I've made a lot of mistakes and seen customers make a lot of mistakes. I highly recommend any company that wants to develop a device for the healthcare world to make sure that when they work with a company like ours, that they have a solid consulting agreement in place. Our consulting agreement, and they're similar to what some of our customers have asked us to sign, basically says that everything that we do is owned by you. So what you want to be very careful, unless there's a very good reason not, to do that, you want to make sure that you own all the IP at the end of the effort. The IP includes, anything that's patentable, obviously, all of the drawings, all of the test procedures, everything, and all of the native files so that you can edit those files. There are companies out there that don't do that, and we've had to reverse engineer products for customers of ours because, not often, fortunately, but because they didn't have those in place. So, make sure you control that. Now I know you have other questions for me.
Yeah, so I think you've touched on a lot of them. Yeah, as we're finishing up, I would love to know, what are 3 concrete steps that early stage entrepreneurs can take right now to get started with designing and developing and testing a product?
Sure. I think the most important thing you should do is make sure you define your products. Make sure you understand what you want that product to do, and understand what that market wants, right? So because you can do something, it doesn't mean that the market wants it. Maybe you figured out how to send a raccoon to the moon. Is anybody going to pay for it, right? You want to know and understand the market, what the difference is. Don't do a Me Too product unless there's something, what happens a lot in the Me Too product side is that you're going to fight against large companies that have tons of money, and they can easily basically knock you out of the market. So understanding the market is huge. Get advice from experts and entrepreneurs. Last meeting we had was with Amir, and he mentioned that. So, I'm going to guess that half the people on the call have PhDs. You are brilliant individuals. You can do everything, but get advice from experts. Get advice from the quality and regulation expert. Get advice from other entrepreneurs that have done this before. Because if you're not willing to ask those, you're going to make the same mistakes that they have done. So I think that's a big one. And like I said, develop the specification for the product. It doesn't have to be final, but you have to have enough information on paper that you yourself understand what you want to do. What does that product look like? What is it going to do? What are the specs? What do I need to be able to meet that market requirement? If you come to RPM Tech or any other company with lightweight requirements, there's a good chance that any of those companies will spend a lot of time trying to figure out what you're looking for. We've done it before. You know, I tell my customers, are you sure you want to do this? You don't have enough information here. But I think that's very important.
Wonderful. Does anyone else have any other questions?
I just want to ask one last question. You mentioned something about clinical trials, I think, for one of your products.
Yes.
How complex is it to get something you're working on through clinical trials, or to even get them to accept it for it?
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult. And I think that's probably, I would probably let Ed answer that in more detail. I don't know if he's still on the call, but getting to clinical studies is difficult. You do have to keep in mind that getting to clinical studies, there are things that you cannot change when you get to clinical studies. So, you know, getting something approved to get to the next stage doesn't mean that you have to have, you know, expensive tooling, but it means that a lot of the items have to be the final design, which means, you know, you've put a lot of effort into it. And you probably have a little bit more to add to this if you're still on.
Sure. So, I mean, the two big things with any medical device are safety and effectiveness. And, you know, when you go into a clinical trial, you're probably trying to determine the effectiveness, but you at a minimum have to have the safety established. So you're going to have to build prototypes or whatever you're going to go into the trials with under, you know, strict controls with material, and you will have to establish safety. So if there's biocompatibility involved or electrical safety or, you know, those kinds of things, you know, would have to be done up front. And then, you know, depending on where the trial is done, you could file for an investigational device exemption. So, you know, an IDE. And then often you have to go through, you know, a hospital internal review board, and they would look at what you've done and what you're trying to do with your study. And, you know, they would review and ultimately accept what you've done and allow you to start the trial and enroll patients. But all that stuff has to be done up front to, you know, to show that the device isn't going to hurt anybody first and foremost.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
I was going to say, by the time you get to clinical studies, you've spent quite a bit of time and money getting to something that you can actually test. And the more, you know, depending on the class of product that you're looking at, anything that's going to be in contact with the patient versus something as simple as a diagnostics instrument, they're all going to require very different levels of quality in place and everything else that goes with it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And Cyrus has kindly shared his email in the chat. So thank you so much, Cyrus. This was really informative. It's really great to get an overview because it's especially if you're new to the field, it's hard to get a sense of, you know, all the steps that are involved, even though it's not linear. So thank you so much. So next, I'm going to pull up a slide here for next time. All right. So next time is Kellyanne Wachratsit from Johns Hopkins University. So the session will be on October 20th at 5 p.m. And she has a pretty unique perspective at the intersection of engineering, regulatory strategy, and commercialization of medical devices. She's also a nursing student. So I hope you can join us. It should be really interesting. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank
Thank you. Thanks, Neil. Thanks, Cyrus.
Sure.